All right, so let me walk you guys through the process really quick, the game plan, so to say. First things first, got to remove all the plastic filter housing, these little plastic covers on the side, and then this entire cowl hood or semi-engine bay cover piece will be removed, giving us more access to the engine because, as you know, on BMWs, these engines tend to sit decently far into the whole firewall area and where a lot of the plastic covers are. So all this is going to come off, and then we're going to be able to take off our engine cover, our actual engine cover, and then we will have the fuel rail and the injector harness, etc., exposed, which we'll be able to address then, purge the fuel out of the fuel rail, and then get to the injector clips, remove those, and then after that we should be able to pull the whole fuel rail off once it's disconnected, and then we can address the injector that is bad. So let me walk you guys through the process really quick here of how I determined that this is a bad injector. What happened was the check engine light came on, I scanned it, and I had an activation error for injector 2 on cylinder 2. I took the injector out, I replaced it and put it in spot number 1 and put it all back together, drove the car, got the same misfire and the same error, except for this time it was activation error injector 1. So that leads me to believe that this is an injector problem. And yes, by the way, these are extremely expensive. This is $145 for one fuel injector. So I wanted to mess around and really try to chase the problem first, but it turns out apparently that there's an electrical problem with one of my injectors, because on top of that, the misfire that I am experiencing is intermittent. So 2 out of, I don't know, 5 times that I drive the car or turn on the car, I have this misfire. And like I said, I was able to replicate it under controlled circumstances by moving the injector around, which eliminated a lot of other possibilities. And it appears to me at this point that this is a injector problem. So guys, let's dig right into it. Here we have 6, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 millimeter little bolts. And now we have 2 more 8 millimeter bolt that need to be removed. Okay, and then at this point, we have plenty of room to remove our engine cover. So very carefully pry this off the rubber grommets, and you should be able to slide it right out. All right, so the next part is going to be addressing the fuel rail and the injector electrical connectors. So as you can see down here, they are connected with little clamps, that little silver clamp. So we have to very carefully pry those off in order to release the connector. Once that's done, this whole plastic wire assembly should be able to lift up and away from the injectors. We also want to be careful with all these wires that are hanging out. I personally like to disconnect them and just get them out of the way, but that's not necessary. However, right here underneath, you can see there is a Schrader valve, which we're going to need to get access to in order to release the pressure off the fuel rail in a controlled manner. If you really want to, you could technically just pull out the injector, but be careful because then it's going to spray absolutely everywhere on the engine. So I like to just have a couple rags ready and release the pressure, like I said, through this particular Schrader valve. Besides that, if you want to, you can also disconnect this back fuel supply line. It makes taking out the fuel rail a little bit easier once everything is disconnected, and then it makes it nice and clean and easy to replace the fuel injector. So let's get going. Alright, so I really don't know if you're going to be able to see that any better, but right here you can see this little metal clip that I moved. Originally it was in this little groove down here, right there, and I went in, pried it off to the side, and then pushed it up. And it is now up on both sides. I do apologize about this. It's really hard to see, and it's now pushed up and out of the way in order to be able to remove this injector clip. Pretty much everything is close to being disassembled. Next step right here, this little Schrader valve. This can be a little bit tough to remove, but it's a little protective cover for the actual valve that's inside. Can release the pressure of the fuel rail. So we're gonna take this off now, and we're gonna purge the fuel that's currently in the injector fuel rail. Be very careful not to drop this little cover into your engine bay, because otherwise it'll be on forever. So get your little press tool and then press on the valve and release the fuel. All right, so actually not a ton came out, but definitely don't want that fuel everywhere. Okay, go ahead and put a rag around this fuel line because it will continuously drip fuel. So just move that out of the way. All right guys, as I said, we're making great progress. Now all we have to do is remove about 4 10mm bolts right here. One right here, got another one right there, and then 2 more in the back of the fuel rail. And then we should be able to remove the fuel rail, take it out very gently to be careful not to damage or nor lose any of the O-rings. Which, by the way, you should replace these O-rings, but you don't want to drop any of them into the engine or anywhere in the engine bay. All right guys, so here it is. This is your fuel rail with the injectors. Not very glorious, but definitely a very, very important part. So in my case, I know that it is injector 1, which is faulty, which is having the electrical problems. So I have a new injector from BMW, which we're gonna be installing here. So we have a new injector right here. Glorious, look at that. So we have new injector with new O-ring, and then also the top O-ring obviously is gonna be new. So let's get going on this. So the way that you remove these clamps is pretty straightforward. As you can see, they're not even tight on the injector. So really it's just more of a security measure. So just go ahead and lightly pry up on these and they should pop right off. And you should be able to wiggle this injector out. Now obviously since I'm trying to film, this is gonna be a lot more difficult than it needs to be. All right, and obviously fuel will spill out. Good thing I'm wearing gloves, but be careful because it makes a mess. That's actually why I had that cardboard underneath here, because I kind of semi-anticipated this, but I was distracted by the filming process and simply was not ready. I'm gonna remove this plastic cover just to be safe so I don't break it. There you go, and that'll also allow me to set the fuel rail on its back for installing the new injector. Anyways, so here's the new injector. I'm gonna take the little cover off, and then you're gonna apply some silicone spray to make this slide in nice and easy. There you go. Because we don't want to damage the O-ring when installing these. Now this little clip is basically going to slide back on exactly how it came off. There you go. Nice and straightforward. Nice and almost easy, I would say. Just trying to visually inspect everything here, and I noticed that one of the sides is not clamping on the way that it should. There you go. You heard the little clip. And that's it, guys. So the new injector is on. As I said, this is the front. This was number 1. Originally it was number 2. After already doing this once, I put it in the first spot, got the same check engine light, ran the scan tool again, and noticed that the error, the fault, had moved from injector 2 to injector 1. So this guy right here was causing me trouble. And hopefully, after all this is done, we will have no more trouble. Let's go back in the car. All right, guys, so the install is pretty much the reverse of the removal. After you have applied your Wiener Schleim, or whatever you prefer to use to make things slide nicely, be very careful not to bend anything. Make sure everything's nice and tucked out of the way. All right, so as you can see, installation of the fuel rail is pretty much the opposite of what you did to take it out. Get the fuel injectors all nice and straight into the intake manifold, and then press down. If it's resisting, don't press too hard because there's so much stuff that you can break. Back off, inspect, maybe something has fallen in there, which would be really bad news, but do not bend anything under any circumstances. You'll know that you've gone far enough if all the 10mm bolts line up perfectly and your fuel rail mount is sitting flush with your cylinder head. So check those things and go ahead with the reinstallation of the bolts. These 10mm bolts, by the way, you tighten them to 10 Nm or 7 foot-pounds of torque. Go ahead and replace your Schrader valve cover. Replace your plastic clip holder. And then go ahead and start reassembling your clips. Grab your feed line for your fuel rail. Be careful because it might still spill fuel. And then press that back on. There you go. Nice and easy. Okay, go ahead and very carefully align your injector electrical harness. These are all lined up, so if I push on them, you should hear that clicking, which confirms that all the injectors are reconnected. Perfect. All right, so everything went quite well. All the main components are reconnected. It's time to try and start your car. Go ahead and reconnect the battery in the back, obviously, and then give it a try. The car will obviously hesitate to start because we've purged the fuel out of all of this, so it needs to rebuild fuel pressure. So don't be freaked out if the car doesn't start right away. Yeah, let's go ahead and do this. There you go, she runs. All right, so that's great news, guys. So even though the engine runs really loud, obviously on top of that, there's no covers, the hood is open, etc., there were no misfires, as far as I could tell at least. So I'm gonna be watching this very closely over the next couple days and weeks to make sure that there are no misfires coming back. But as of right now, I feel pretty confident that we took care of the problem. And at this point, it's time to reassemble the engine bay and call it a day. Well, there she is in all her glory. Everything's back together, the misfire is fixed, and I feel pretty good about everything. Speaking of feeling pretty good, I noticed that this car is leaking, or has been leaking, oil for quite a bit from numerous places. You can see right there, the oil filter housing is leaking, so that's a gasket that I have to do here pretty soon. If you guys want, I can do a DIY on that. Valve cover gasket also is pretty bad. Unfortunately, you can't see it anymore, but it's pretty nasty down there. There's a lot of oil that's just kind of been building up over time. And then we also have the power steering reservoir, which is leaking, as you can see. It is absolutely filthy, and it's dripping down on components. So those are 3 DIY videos if you guys want that I can make. So definitely let me know in the comments if that's something you're interested in seeing. You know, just leave me a like, leave me a comment, leave me some type of notification so I can know that this is something you guys are interested in seeing. So yeah, there you go. If this was helpful to you guys, make sure to give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments what you guys like to see. I love interacting with you guys, and I love hearing your feedback and comments, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.